Okay, picture this. Boston, 1874. You walk into a room, 20 people, absolute beginners in French. 5 minutes later, the instructor, Lambert Sauveur, is actually having a conversation with them in French.
Just 5 minutes. And get this? No translation, no grammar rules, just talking, using gestures, context. I mean, it sounds completely wild, especially back then.
Yeah.
The main method was, grammar translation. Years of memorizing rules before you even dare to speak.
Yeah, it highlights this fundamental split in language teaching, doesn't it? You've got let's call it the analytical camp, all about rules, conscious study, textbooks.
Right. And then the other side, the natural camp, immersion, communication, just kind of absorbing it like kids do. Sauveur was definitely in that second camp.
And that's where we're diving deep today, because those ideas didn't just disappear. They came back big time in the 70s and 80s.
Exactly. Stephen Krashen and Tracy Terrell picked them up, polished them, and they called it the natural approach.
So our mission today is to explore that. Can you, as an adult, really just acquire a language like you did your first one? We'll look at the theories, what it looks like in practice, and, yeah, the criticisms too.
There was definitely hype, but also some pretty serious pushback. We need to sift through it all.
Okay, let's start back with Sauveur. What was his big idea? What made him reject that whole grammar translation thing so forcefully?
It was, well, beautifully simple, really. He looked at kids. Kids learn their first language, their L1, perfectly well without anyone drilling grammar into them.
Right, they just pick it up from hearing it and using it.
Exactly. So Sauveur basically asked, why are we treating adults learning a second language like, I don't know, geometry students? Shouldn't we treat them like people learning to talk?
So he made the classroom this little immersion bubble. But how did that 5-minute trick actually play out? What did he do?
Pure context. He'd point to something, say his finger, and just say the French word. Voilà loi. Point to a table. Voilà la table. No English allowed.
Ah, okay. So the meaning comes straight from what you see. You don't need to look it up.
Precisely. Your eyes and ears do the work. Then, pretty quickly, he'd start asking simple questions, like, où est la table? Where's the table?
And students could just point, maybe. Or say the one word.
Yeah, exactly. Minimal response at first, but it was a conversation, right from day one, driven by repeating things in a way that actually meant something. Sauveur claimed, that after just a few lessons, they could chat quite naturally.
That sounds incredibly ambitious. I mean, amazing if true, but still.
Oh, absolutely ambitious. But it showed, maybe anecdotally, that it was possible to start with communication. But yeah, anecdotes aren't enough for the long run, especially in academia.
Right. That kind of insight needed some, theoretical muscle behind it to really take hold.
And that's the transition. Fast forward about 100 years, you get Stephen Krashen, a linguist, and Tracy Terrell, a teacher. They took Sauveur's core natural idea and built a whole academic framework around it.
Okay, so this is where the natural approach gets its modern structure. And they base it on 5 key hypotheses, right?
High foundational hypotheses. And understanding these is like the key to understanding the whole approach, why it got people so excited, and also why it stirred up so much debate.
Right. Hit us with the big one, the first hypothesis, the acquisition versus learning thing.
Yeah, this is the absolute cornerstone. Hypothesis 1, the acquisition-learning distinction. Krashen said there are 2 totally separate ways to develop language ability. Acquisition is unconscious. It's picking up a language naturally, focusing on the meaning of what you hear and read, like a child does. Learning, on the other hand, is conscious. It's studying the rules, doing grammar exercises, memorizing verb tables.
And Krashen's big claim was?
That only acquisition actually leads to fluency, to being able to speak spontaneously and understand naturally. Conscious learning, he argued, it plays a much smaller role, maybe almost none, in actually generating fluent speech.
Wow. Okay, so that right there throws out most traditional language classes, doesn't it?
Yeah.
The ones built on textbooks and drills.
Pretty much. It was a radical claim. Then comes hypothesis 2, the natural order. This one says we acquire the parts of a language, the grammar structures, in a predictable natural order.
Regardless of when you teach them.
Exactly. Doesn't matter if the textbook introduces, say, the subjunctive mood in chapter 3. If your internal acquirer isn't ready for it, consciously learning the rule won't make you acquire it. Teaching it early might just be a waste of time.
Okay, so if conscious learning doesn't really help you speak fluently, what's the point of it at all, according to Krashen?
Ah, that leads to hypothesis 3, the monitor. That conscious knowledge, the learned stuff, it can only act as a monitor, like an editor.
An editor. How so?
It lets you check and correct what you say or right after your acquired system has produced it. So you might be about to say something, pause, think, oh wait, that verb ending should be different, and fix it. But the monitor doesn't create the sentence. It just polishes it.
So acquisition drives the car. Learning just checks the spelling on the bumper sticker.
Something like that, yeah. The monitor needs time, you need to focus on form, and you need to know the rule. It's not very useful in rapid conversation.
Which brings us to how acquisition actually happens. That's the input idea, right?
Hypothesis 4, the input hypothesis. This is maybe the most famous part. Krashen said we acquire language in only one way, by understanding messages, by receiving comprehensible input.
Comprehensible input, meaning language you can understand.
Mostly, yes. But crucially, it needs to be just slightly beyond your current level. He called this I+1. I is your current level, and +1 is that next step up.
So not too easy, not too hard.
Exactly. If it's just I is stuff you already know, you don't progress. If it's I plus 10, way too difficult, you just get lost, frustrated, and you don't acquire anything either. That I+1 is the sweet spot.
Okay, that makes intuitive sense. And the last piece, it's about feelings, emotions.
Yes. Hypothesis 5. The affective filter. This one feels very true to anyone who's struggled to speak under pressure. Krashen proposed that things like anxiety, low motivation, stress, lack of confidence, they create this kind of mental block.
A filter.
Yeah, an affective filter. And when that filter is up, it prevents the comprehensible input, that crucial I+1, from actually reaching the part of your brain responsible for language acquisition.
So if you're stressed or scared to make mistakes, you could be hearing perfectly understandable language, but you're not actually acquiring it.
That's the idea. Keep the filter low, stay relaxed, motivated, confident, and the input gets through, and acquisition happens. High filter, no acquisition.
Okay, those 5 hypotheses together paint a really compelling picture. It feels humane, learner-centered, but like you said, it wasn't without its critics. Before we get to the pushback, how did this translate into actual classroom practice? What did a natural approach classroom look like?
Well, the absolute #1 principle was focus on meaning, communication, not on drilling grammar rules explicitly. The teacher's main job is to provide tons of comprehensible input.
Using what? Pictures. Acting.
All of that. Lots of visuals, gestures, real objects, rephrasing things, simplifying language, anything to make the message clear without resorting to translation or complex grammatical explanations.
And there's this idea of letting students be quiet at first, right?
Yes, the silent period. This comes directly from observing kids learning their first language. They listen for months, sometimes years, just absorbing before they start speaking much.
So the natural approach classroom allows that. No pressure to speak right away.
Exactly. Students aren't forced to produce language before they feel ready. They can participate non-verbally. A key technique often used here is total physical response, or TPR.
Ah, TPR, where the teacher gives commands in the target language.
Right. Stand up, walk to the door, touch your nose. Students just do the actions. They show they understand without having to say a word. It keeps comprehension high and anxiety, the affective filter, low.
Okay, so they're absorbing input, the filter's low. When does speaking actually start?
It emerges naturally. When students have acquired enough language and feel comfortable enough, they'll start producing. Maybe single words first, then short phrases, then longer sentences.
Driven by the need to actually communicate something.
Yes. To share information, express an opinion, ask a real question. Not just to complete a grammar exercise, the focus is always on the message.
And what about mistakes? In traditional classes, errors get corrected immediately. Here.
Errors are seen as natural, even necessary parts of the acquisition process. Think about how kids make mistakes when they're learning to talk.
Yeah, they say things like good instead of went.
Exactly. So in the natural approach, error correction is minimal, especially early on. Constant correction raises that affective filter, makes students anxious, and shuts down acquisition. The idea is that errors will eventually self-correct as they get more input.
And grammar rules. Are they ever taught?
Not explicitly through drills and memorization. The belief is that grammar is acquired implicitly, subconsciously, as a result of understanding all that comprehensible input. It sort of emerges from the language you absorb, especially through meaningful stories and interactions.
It sounds, I have to say, incredibly appealing compared to diagrammy sentences. But, okay, let's face the music. You mentioned intense debate. What were the main criticisms? Where did people say, hang on, this goes too far?
Well, it was a very strong reaction against traditional methods, and sometimes the pendulum swings too far right. The first major issue raised was the environment gap.
Meaning the classroom isn't the real world.
Exactly. A child learning their first language is immersed 247. They get thousands upon thousands of hours of input, deeply tied to their survival and social needs. A classroom learner. Maybe 3-4 hours a week.
Yeah, you just can't replicate that sheer quantity of input.
You really can't. So critics argued, is it realistic to expect the same process to work efficiently with so much less exposure?
And what about the learners themselves? Adults aren't children.
That's the second big point. Ignoring adult cognition. Adults have sophisticated analytical skills. We can see patterns, make generalizations, understand abstract rules in a way children can't.
So deliberately not using those abilities seems wasteful.
Potentially counterproductive, yeah. Critics asked, why throw away these powerful cognitive tools just because a child doesn't use them for L1 acquisition? Maybe conscious understanding of a rule can help an adult learner.
Which leads to the most controversial bit, the total rejection of explicit grammar teaching.
Right. The extremity of no grammar. While Krashen argued it was mostly useless for fluency, a lot of research, especially later research, suggests that some focused attention on grammatical form is actually beneficial.
For certain things.
Yeah, especially for structures that are maybe complex or not very noticeable in natural input alone. Think about tricky prepositions or articles in English, a versus the, or maybe complex verb tenses. Explicit explanation can provide a shortcut for adults.
Okay, so the practice didn't quite match the environment or the learner. What about the hypotheses themselves? Were they easy to test or apply?
That was another challenge. Take the IMPO hypothesis, the I+1. It sounds neat, but how do you actually measure a student's current level for everyone?
Especially in a class with 30 different students.
Exactly. And how do you then ensure the input you provide is exactly one step beyond that level for everyone? It's practically impossible. What's I+1 for one student might be I2 for another and I+5 for someone else.
So the input might often be too easy or too hard for many in the room.
That's the reality. And the effective filter idea, while powerful, also had implementation issues. The silent period, for instance.
Right, you mentioned that earlier, letting students be quiet.
While maybe helpful for some, forcing a highly motivated adult who wants to try speaking to remain silent for weeks or months, that could be incredibly frustrating.
And that frustration itself could raise the effective filter, kind of defeating the purpose.
Precisely. Or take error correction. While too much is bad, zero correction can also cause anxiety for some learners who genuinely want to know if they're getting it right. They might feel lost without any guidance.
Okay, so the pure, unadulterated natural approach got some significant practical and theoretical hurdles. It seems the pendulum maybe swung a bit too far from grammar obsession to, well, almost grammar denial.
I think that's a fair assessment. But, and this is crucial, even though the pure approach wasn't the final answer, its core insights profoundly changed language teaching for the better. It forced a necessary reevaluation.
So what are the enduring lessons? If we synthesize what survived the debates, what should we, as learners or teachers, take away from the natural approach?
I think we can boil it down to about 5 key takeaways that are still incredibly relevant.
Okay, let's run through them.
First, prioritize comprehensible input. This is huge. You must get large amounts of input that you can mostly understand. Use strategies, visuals, context, simplification to make input comprehensible. Don't just bang your head against language that's totally opaque.
Makes sense. Input is the fuel. What's second?
Second, reduce anxiety. The effective filter is real. Learning happens best when you feel safe, motivated, and reasonably confident. So, create or find a supportive environment. Normalize errors as part of the process. Focus on communication, not perfection.
That's a big one for self-learners too, managing your own stress. Third,
let meaning drive the bus. Focus your learning activities on understanding and conveying real messages. Tell stories, discuss topics, solve problems. Let the need to communicate pull the grammar along with it, rather than starting with abstract grammar rules divorced from meaning.
so communication first, grammar in service of communication. Number 4.
Fourth, value listening and processing time. Recognize that there's real value in just listening and understanding, even if you're not speaking much yet. That silent period, or just periods of focused listening, allows your brain to internalize the language. Don't feel pressured to produce constantly.
Embrace the input phase. Okay, and the final one. This seems important given the criticisms about grammar.
Fifth, use explicit teaching strategically. This is the balance. Don't throw out conscious learning entirely. For adults, targeted, clear explanations of tricky grammar points, especially those hard to just pick up from input, can be very efficient and helpful. It's a tool, use it wisely.
Okay, that feels like a really balanced practical synthesis. Input is king, keep anxiety low, focus on meaning, allow listening time, but don't be afraid of a little explicit help when needed.
Exactly. It respects both the natural acquisition process and the cognitive strengths adults bring to the table.
So to make this really concrete for listeners, what are maybe 2 or 3 specific activities inspired by the natural approach that someone could use or look for?
Sure. One classic is TPR storytelling. It builds on simple, total physical response. The teacher tells a story, incorporating actions and vocabulary, and students act it out or respond physically. It's rich in context, keeps the filter low, and allows participation without demanding spoken output right away.
So you're getting complex input, but responding simply.
Nice.
What else?
Picture-based conversations. Find an interesting, detailed picture or series of pictures. Use it to spark discussion. You can ask simple questions. What do you see? Move to narratives. What happened before this? What will happen next? And even hypothetical questions.
Yeah.
What if?
And that naturally allows for different levels of response, right?
Yeah.
Someone might just point, another might give a simple sentence, someone else a more complex one.
Precisely. It caters to different eye levels within the same activity. And a third one, maybe more for self-study, is creating authentic input stations.
What does that involve?
Just deliberately exposing yourself to different kinds of real-world language. Maybe short video clips, simple news articles, podcast snippets, social media posts in the target language. The key is variety and focusing on understanding the main message, not sweating every single unknown word. Lots of exposure to meaningful stuff.
So finding ways to get that comprehensible input from different engaging sources.
Yeah, keeping it interesting and focused on meaning.
This has been really illuminating. The natural approach, even with its controversies, clearly forced a major and I think necessary shift in how we think about learning languages, away from just rules towards communication and comprehension.
Absolutely. Sauveur's claim back in 1874, having beginners converse in 5 minutes. Okay, maybe a bit hyperbolic for effect, but the principle behind it, starting with understanding and real communication, that remains incredibly powerful.
That core distinction between unconscious acquisition and conscious learning and realizing which one really fuels fluency, that seems key.
It really is. And it leads to a provocative thought for you, the listener. Think about how you spend your language learning time right now. If we accept that deep understanding and practical application are what matter most, how much of your time is dedicated to conscious learning, like memorizing rules or vocabulary lists in isolation? And how much is spent on acquisition, engaging with meaningful, comprehensible input, trying to understand and communicate?
That ratio, thinking about that ratio could really change how effectively you learn.
It often makes all the difference in how quickly and how well you progress towards actual fluency.
That's a fantastic point to ponder. Thank you so much for breaking down the natural approach for us today. The history, the theory, the practice, and the lasting impact.
My pleasure. It's a fascinating piece of the language learning puzzle.
Definitely. Make sure you join us next time for another deep dive. We'll keep digging into the topics that help you become a smarter, more effective learner.